It's stories like these that I wish get more attention than they get, concerning the fact that right now we're just seeing wall to wall coverage of everything Iran, Venezuela, Trump, what's happening in Minneapolis. And those are very important subjects. Or Carney making a trip to China to just negotiate with them, which are very important subjects too. I'm not dismissing that we can't cover stuff like that. When it comes to a serious topic, such as this one, that I didn't even know about until very recently, and I was heartbroken. I was very emotional with this story, and even more emotional that this doesn't get attention. This doesn't get attention. And it's happening in our own backyard. It's happening within this country. And as I said with the Iran protest video that we covered with the Torontonians, the 40,000 blocking the street, it's amazing that all the attention seems to be focused on geopolitics like a psyop, which Iran protests were pretty much a psyop, and not focus on vital issues that's affecting people within this country right now as you're on the streets for a different country. So, this story is very heartbreaking. This is from a publication called Slay, because again, no one's really mentioning about this. Canadian government euthanizes a young and healthy 26-year-old for depression. A 26-year-old male who is healthy. He's a young individual. He is not in any serious condition that requires this life-altering, this deciding moment, that the ultimate faith, you have to make this decision. He was just an individual who happened to be depressed, who happened to have a mental illness, that there is a myriad of other solutions they could have considered, but they went down this direction. And I've seen too many of these stories that it's become alarming. It has become alarming. And you're going to see why this should be a national attention story. This should be the top of everyone's concern. A story like this, should be a cause for protesting on the streets. Not so much a foreign country that a lot of people probably can't find on a map or tell you anything about it, but you got told by the mainstream media that it's your duty to support a foreign country that we have no decision over, when this is going on under your noses. So, 26-year-old, young and healthy 26-year-old, killed by the Canadian government simply because he had depression. And reading this story is depressing. We're living in a time where depression, anxiety, mental illnesses are skyrocketing. Like, it's almost the point that everyone has some sort of mental illness. So, what does that say? What does that say when this MAiD program is running amok and going after young, impressionable, vulnerable people like this 26-year-old that didn't have to make this decision, that didn't have to die? So, in the article, make it a bit bigger, says Canada's euthanasian regime has claimed yet another young life after a 26-year-old man suffering from depression was euthanized by the government's assisted death program, despite previously being rejected for the lethal injection by a doctor who said he was too young and healthy to be killed. So he went to different doctors, and the doctors previously, before all this happened, told him, no, you're too young. You have your life ahead of you. Maybe think about this life-altering decision. And that's what all these doctors should be doing. But one doctor in particular, the one that did this, you're going to see why. You're going to see why this particular doctor went forward with this, regardless of the fact that he's a young, healthy male, that he had his whole life ahead of him. You're going to see why. And it's deeply disturbing. The devastating revelation was shared by his mother, Margaret Masilla, in a heartbreaking Facebook post, who accused the socialized healthcare system's doctors of using a loophole to kill her son. Marcellus announced that her son, Keanu, had been killed through the Canadian government's Medically Assistance in Dying system. That's the MAiD program. After previous failed attempts to euthanize Kyle for diabetes and visual impairment, he was eventually killed for depression, which was classified as mental illness according to his devastated mom. With a broken heart, I'm sharing that my boy Keanu passed away after being euthanized, Marcilla wrote. The death was approved by Ellen Wiebe, a Vancouver abortionist and euthanasia practitioner, according to Marcilla. Wow. She's just scaling the entire board of mortality and just ending the life of anybody. Does she think that, for entertainment, she cosplays as the Grim Reaper? Like, what kind of mindset? What kind of mindset that a doctor who is supposed to be licensed and trained to help cure you and make you feel better, going around and killing young, impressionable people, healthy people? Wiebe, known as Dr. Death, has ended the lives of more than 400 patients. Keanu was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when he was 4 and later became visually impaired. So, type 1 diabetes, not type 2, wasn't the fact that he got it because of lack of exercise or his diet. He got the one that you unfortunately get. But you can manage through that. I know many people that have type 1 diabetes. They manage through that. That doesn't require a person to go to this doctor, this death doctor, and make a life-altering decision like this. Like, the insanity that comes from it is just so sick. In adult life, he struggled with depression brought on by his condition. 4 years earlier, his mother successfully intervened to stop a scheduled euthanasia in Ontario. 4 years ago, here in Ontario, we were able to stop his euthanasia and get him some help, she wrote. He was alive because people stepped in when he was vulnerable and not capable of making a final, irreversible decision. In 2022, Marcilla launched a public petition to halt her son's planned euthanasia at Toronto MAiD House. At the time, she expressed disbelief that her son had even been approved. Can you believe it, she wrote? The doctor literally was given him the gun to self-delete himself. Marcilla said she pleaded for real care, treatment for depression, therapy, family involvement, and hope. None of this happened, she wrote. Just an application that lasted for 90 days and then approved by the MAiD House. There was no attempt to connect with family members, no assistance to get proper help or medication for this young man, just an approval. On September 28, 2022, Keanu confirmed that public pressure had worked. He revealed in an interview that after a wave of calls to his doctor, the physician withdrew his role in my care plan. Keanu then searched for another MAiD successor and failed. One doctor explicitly told him he was young and healthy and should not be considered for euthanasia. 3 years later, that safeguard collapsed. Tragically, the Canadian system later allowed something very different to happen in Vancouver, Marcilla wrote. A doctor named Dr. Ellen Wiebe, aka Dr. Death, approved his death based on mental illness. The approval occurred despite euthanasia for mental illness being officially banned in Canada until 2027. So, they're trying to keep expanding MAiD, which is already alarming. It's already problematic. But this doctor in particular is already breaking the law by doing this. She is breaking the law. because the mental illness pack, which should not be happening, doesn't go into effect till 2027, next year. So why did this doctor ignore that and euthanize this man? This doctor should be arrested. This doctor should be in prison. This is what I mean. There should be a national outcry. But there isn't. Because they're trying to squash this story down. They're trying to make you focus on Iran and Venezuela and Donald Trump and Mark Carney going to China. And not focus on this. Somehow Dr. Death found a loophole in the system, one that now demands to be exposed so that no other patient has to endure this, she wrote. Marcellus did not hold back in describing what she believes represents. This is disgusting on every level. No compassion, no protection, no effort to save a life, only to end it. This is not healthcare, she warned. This is a failure of ethics, accountability, and humanity. And that is awful. That is awful. Considering, as a Canadian myself, you know, one of the great assets of being a Canadian citizen, one of the things we promote about this country is our healthcare system. And here we have long wait hours in the ER where people have died because they can't reach to any sort of doctor or nurse or practitioner. Our hospitals are crumbling. They completely gutted it out. And we're just offering to just murder people out in the open, our own citizens, instead of getting this guy proper treatment. I'm sure we would have a whole different conversation if someone just reached out to him, offered him to sit for a cup of coffee and explain to him that you should not be making this decision. But they're doing it anyway. They are doing it anyway. So, here's the mother. This is, I guess she was on with Rebel News. And they said, today, Margaret Marcilla, mother of 26-year-old Keanu, I don't know how to say his last name, I'm going to skip that, who Canada euthanized, read statements from several doctors who refused to approve MAiD for him before Dr. Death. So all these doctors knew that he was young. All these doctors knew that he was healthy, that he did not need to go this, until this one particular person, this one particular doctor who just did it and broke the law. So she should be arrested. She should be arrested, investigated, and stripped of any medical practicing whatsoever for doing this, for stabbing the country in the back and partaking in this. Here's what the mother had to say in the interview with Rebel News. Listen to this.
You know, I have some medical reports from my son from different doctors, and I've obviously highlighted a lot of important parts that that not only gives us as a family an indication of how improper this approval was. And I think the government should know, and these are from actual doctors. They're not, things that I've said or felt throughout this whole interview. Like I said before, I mentioned this one doctor did say that, please note that referral for MAiD assessment for Candovafian has been declined. Please contact the Ontario MAiD coordination with a number. So that was available to him. And a doctor said, I'm not going to approve you for MAiD. You don't qualify. I'm declining you. But here's the number that the people might approve you. Does that make sense there? Then there's another one that that this situation in this patient does not fit the typical picture of a patient who would be approved for MAiD. I had a conversation with palliative care who agreed that this was an unusual situation. This is from another doctor. Mm-hmm. I have another one that says Candovafian is a patient of mine being treated for depression. I understand that there are pending criminal charges which have contributed to a worsening of his depressive symptoms. Mm-hmm. And that's going back on his psychotic behavior, under psychosis because of drugs and so forth. This was actually back in 2023. and he had a slew of charges because of his behavior out in public. And one episode was with his sister, and he was just going crazy because of all the shrooms and drugs that he was on. Another doctor said that it will be worthwhile having him seen by psychiatric service here, considering his threat to harm himself by refusing to take his insulin at home.
Wow.
I think that was one way that he thought that maybe he would be able to get approved if he doesn't take his insulin, which to my knowledge, that's never happened. He was always on top of his insulin. And in fact, he showed me his A1Cs a few months ago that they were fine. I feel because it was made accessible to him, because already he was approved once, he just shut it all down. He shut down all help. He shut me down. He shut everybody down for help for mental illness. And he just focused on the MAiD because of that first Dr. Tepper who approved him. And now Dr. Ellen Weave, who approved him again and found another loophole. And that's what's disgusting. And it's going to happen again moving forward, especially in 2027, if we don't stop it for mental illness, especially for mental illness.
I mean, how can you not be heartbroken by this? How can you not be outraged? Especially knowing that as this is going forward, she said exactly 2027, you better be aware, because that's going to open the floodgate, not just for, elderly sick people that are on their deathbed, which was the whole intention of what we thought MAiD was supposed to be. That's what they rolled it out as, but they keep expanding it to include younger, vulnerable people, and including children. So imagine a child that has their whole life ahead of them, that could easily get through this with help, with services, with everything we can offer. Imagine a child just being told, have you ever considered making this irreversible life decision? Think how sinister that is. And how all the focus is about Iran and the people protesting Iran. Oh, the government's cracking their heads and how awful it is. Have you seen what's happening here? You're focusing on a foreign country and their governance and trying to support their freedom, when here we're psychotically killing our own citizens. And no one says a word about this. No one speaks about this. I wish the 40,000 people that were blocking the streets of Toronto paid attention to this. I wish they stood in solidarity to stop this measure, to stop from more impressionable people, young individuals, from making this decision, because their psychotic government is forcing people down this path. It's really sickening. It is absolutely sickening. And we've shown multiple instances where they're just going with this. They're leaving people with no other option than to go down the MAiD path. And here, for example, you've seen the videos we covered. We've done all the stories about veterans, Canadian veterans, people that put themselves in the front lines of war, sacrifice themselves to defend the country, and this is how the country repays them. Paralympian tries to get wheelchair ramp, says Veteran Affairs employee offered her MAiD. So not only is this person a veteran, they're a Paralympian. They're an athlete who happens to be in a wheelchair, just trying to get a wheelchair ramp for their house so they can be more mobile. And Veterans Affairs basically snubbed her and said, no, we're going to offer you this alternative, which is irreversible damage. Think of how sinister that is. And the fact that our news is angry about the Iranian government, how Maduro is this evil socialist dictator, how Cuba needs to be damaged because communism All the doctors they bring out and how people travel there constantly. Oh my God, the terror. Those are all distractions from this. From this insanity, psychotic, just almost demonic. It's not even almost, it is demonic situation that we're dealing with right now. How can anyone be silent about this? This constantly going on every single day and being told to focus all the attention on another country. We still got to support Ukraine because somehow they're still going to take on Russia. Meanwhile, our government is putting our citizens in a slaughterhouse. Literally, buying them up like cattle to enter a slaughterhouse because they're deemed useless. Even though they serve their country, they're tax-paying citizens, they're young and healthy. They have their whole lives ahead of them. They're still going to go along with this. Here's Jasmine Lane. We've shown this before. This is, again, very emotional for me to even bring this up because of just how awful this is. Then our country is doing it. But in Manitoba, you have to be a special kind of demonic to advocate for MAiD for young, vulnerable people and people who are self-deleting. Imagine walking into your clinic for help and being told the world would be better off without you, that you should cave to the lies the devil on your shoulder is telling you and be more affordable for Canada's healthcare system. Yes! That they literally said that. The CBC, one of their headlines says medically assisted deaths could save millions in healthcare spending. They're making this like it's a victorious win for the nation. Well, if we kill off more citizens, then we don't have to pay for their health care. So then the tax-paying money that they paid for, that's supposed to go to healthcare, supposed to go to actually treating our own citizens like actual human beings, we can then take that money and go splurge it on ourselves, do more money laundering schemes, send it off to Cruella de Vil Freeland in Ukraine. In that money laundering pit that we're never going to see a dime ever again. As someone who has transformed my life and became empowered to live it, thanks to recovery plans and treatment after trying to end it, and is on the other side after losing the man I loved for nearly 10 years of my life to the same fate, there is nothing compassionate about this. This is pure evil. And what she's talking about is these pamphlets, see here, were passed around to high schoolers in Manitoba. High schoolers. Emotionally vulnerable, stunted high schoolers that every day is a roller coaster for them. Every day. They're depressed. They're anxious. They're scared of a test. They're worried about, prom. They're worried about acne. They're worried about, peer pressure. Every single day is a roller coaster for them. And you're giving out pamphlets to self-delete them. Imagine how sick and twisted you'd have to be to even consider this an option. And even in the pamphlet here, look at this. MAiD for children and teens. A special committee of MPs and senators studying MAiD has recommended allowing MAiD for mature minors. Which that is their legal loophole to allow for this. Because you can't pressure children to self-delete themselves, but you can rewrite the term, say that they're a mature minor, which is a made-up term, the same made-up term that they're trying to excuse PDF files, by the way. That's how sick this is. To allow this, to allow pamphlets to be distributed at a high school in Manitoba. A mature minor is a child or teen who is deemed capable of making a decision for MAiD. Are you gotta be kidding me? You gotta be kidding me. You realize they have to be 18 to vote. In the province of Ontario, you have to be 19 to drink. Most people don't have full functioning brains until they're 25. But a mature minor apparently is under the eyes of whatever satanic, sinister MFer is doing this, is capable enough to making a irreversible life decision. Wow. I am speechless. I'm sure if I was in that, if someone gave me that, I'd be in shock. I'd be calling up the government. I'd be calling up whoever hotline this is and demanding an explanation of why they're even doing this. And here, MAiD for mental illness, set to take effect March of 2027. So again, that doctor committed a crime. That doctor committed an actual crime. Because they can't offer self-deletion for mental illness until March of 2027, next year. They legally can't. 1 in 10 people. So it's highlighted here. It says 1 in 10 people will wait more than 4 months for counseling. The wait period for MAiD is only 3 months. I can't believe this is the world we're in. I can't believe this is happening in our own country. And no one's protesting about this. No one's out the street. No one's angry about this. But sure, focus all the attention on Iran. Focus all the attention on Venezuela, on Ukraine, on Russia, on China, on Donald Trump. While this is going on deliberately in front of your noses. And it's affecting everybody, including now your kids. How would you feel if your son or daughter came home with this pamphlet? They went to school, they got a handout in class that told them that you're basically worthless, so consider deleting yourself. How would you feel about that? How would you feel? So, this woman, Tara Armstrong, who's a member of parliament for the BC government, she's concerned about this because a lot of people who should be up in arms about this, I think they are up in arms, but they're not taking action for this. She brought it to attention to the BC Parliament, saying MAiD is killing Canadians who aren't terminally ill, but merely disabled or lonely. How do we get here? Today I asked the Premier to stop this. So this is what she said to the BC government on this issue.
When this program began, every Canadian was told it would only apply in the most extreme cases. People in agonizing pain with no hope of recovery. No one, and I'm sure not a single person in this chamber, believed we would ever come to this. That in our beautiful province, people with disabilities, people struggling to survive, people battling loneliness would be encouraged to die. The Premier has the power to stop this, to stop it now, to legislate, to use the notwithstanding clause if needed. Let's put aside for a moment the issue of those with terminal illnesses. Mr. Speaker, will the Premier at least introduce legislation to stop the government from killing people who aren't actually dying?
Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'll simply repeat a few of the things I said in that these are very personal decisions that are taken by individuals together with their families, with their care providers, under a strong system of accountability to ensure that these decisions are taken with compassion and made with integrity. Those decisions lie with those people, and I know that everyone...
She's talking about death. It's not integrity of life. It's not integrity of the individual as a person, how they can pass through whatever mental illness or traumas or traumatics that they're dealing with. They're not encouraging that. They're not encouraging to reach out to services like Kitz Health Phone or Bell Let's Talk. You know, remember those? Remember how we used to have campaigns to break the stigma, to allow people to discuss about mental illnesses so that they can get proper treatment, to actually feel aired in this country. And you get the Minister of Health for BC talking about the integrity of death. Integrity of death. This is, again, it's just so disgusting how this never gets to the level of tension that all these other stories get. It's really disgusting. This should be a national cry. There should be protests. There should be other countries looking into this country and wondering what the hell is going on. What kind of regime is Canada in? What kind of regime and dictator is Mark Carney allowing this to occur? So here's one of the satanic people responsible for this. This is the former Minister of Justice, David Lamonte, campaigned to expand MAiD. He campaigned to expand MAiD. So the program that started off as a means for people that are on their deathbed, that are hooked up to machines, that no longer are capable of living a normal human life, making that decision, has now expanded so much so that they're going after anybody. MAiD has been offered to military vets, disabled Canadians, and people who simply can't afford to live. They're going after people who can't pay rent, as they're dealing with an economic depression. Think again, how sinister this is. They're now going to go after poor people. You can't afford your rent? Have you ever thought about self-deleting yourself? Because apparently, we just don't care about anybody. We never cared. We never will. We are satanic. We're just going to take the money and run and screw all of you. So here's David Lamonte, a guy who should be behind bars. Same with the doctor. Same with a lot of these people, who, of course, are never going to get anything. They're going to walk away scot-free because our world is run by criminals. The people that are telling you who we're supposed to be angry at, who we're supposed to be yelling at, who we're supposed to be protesting for or against, these are the people you should be angered and disgusted with. These are the people. These are the satanic people. These are the terrorists that are destroying your life every single day. Iran's not doing it. Russia's not doing it. China's not doing it. We're doing it to our own people. And I don't see any protest. I don't see anybody going ballistic about how we need to turn over the Canadian regime, other than Donald Trump saying that he wants to turn into a 51st state, which I don't recommend it, because you're going to get stuck with this, and just how disparaging the country is. And America's not doing well either. America's in the same boat as we are. The whole West is just a satanic clown show. It's a circus. Here, listen to this.
Parliament of Canada debated and approved what it had assured Canadians would never happen 6 years prior. At present, beginning in March 2024, the law will permit a significant broadening of the use of MAiD.
Access to safe and affordable housing in this country is at the center of a plea tonight for a medically assisted death.
This isn't the case. Let me underline that. This isn't the case of somebody who is depressed or has suicidal ideations, going to a doctor and saying, I want MAiD.
Used to pour in following a Global News exclusive that revealed medical assistance in dying was offered to a Canadian veteran looking for treatment for post-traumatic stress.
There's a great deal of heightened rhetoric around this, a great deal of it very much misleading.
When a Canadian veteran picked up the phone and called Veterans Affairs Canada to get treatment for his combat-related PTSD and a traumatic brain injury, he expected help getting better and getting his life back. Instead, he got an unexpected and unwanted offer to help him end it through medically assisted death.
an incremental expansion. It is not going to apply to that many cases. We're talking about the vast majority of MAiD cases are still end of life.
There is a startling new development in the ongoing controversy around veterans being offered medical assistance in dying. A retired corporal who is paraplegic shocked MPs in Ottawa yesterday when she told them an employee of Veterans Affairs Canada offered her help with arranging a medically assisted death.
It is fair to say that we are pushing this forward prudently, at an appropriate pace, and I think for the benefit of.
Well, in the words of Mark Carney, who cares? Who cares? You know what? The country is going to hell and we caused a lot of these problems, so might as well just kiss your ass goodbye. Because apparently even being a veteran and sacrifice your life to defend this great nation no longer the case. Or being a young person and being told that you have your life to look forward to, that you could do anything. The Canadian dream is there. Apparently that doesn't mean anything. So, why are they doing this? Why are they doing this? That's the ultimate question. Well, we showed you the one aspect, that it's saving money, saving all this taxpayer money that's supposed to go into healthcare because that's an investment. That's what we paid for. That's why we have taxes. Instead, we're paying off all the money laundering schemes that keep going on to this day. But there's even something more sinister that no one ever brings up. This is from the Senate of Canada, from Parliament here. Canada must not be complicit in predatory organ trafficking industry. Yes, organ trafficking. And if you recall the video we did about Canadian Blood Services, there was an investigation that showed the Canadian Blood Services, all the donations of blood that people were giving weren't exactly donations. They weren't going to your local hospital to help the guy that got, hit in a car crash. They're being sold. Your donations are being sold to a third-party contractor, a private equity firm that's running this, running the trafficking and selling off your blood and organs to the highest bidder around the world. This is the sinister aspect that they're not going to tell you. This is why there's lobby groups, literally lobby groups, pushing the government to extend more people into this. That's why they're doing this. Because the people that are profiting from the literal death of our own citizens and cutting you up like beef to sell off your product, to sell off your organs, they're the ones making money, making bang off of you, to then take that money to lobby Parliament to push this even further. Canada leads the world in organ donations from euthanasia. And I say donations in quotation because we know it's not about donating. Not you giving up your organ for someone in need. And it's not going to someone in need in your neighborhood or even in this country. It's going to private capital. It's going to a third party that's going to traffic all around the world. And you remember this? Remember this? Remember they did an advertisement for MAiD. They literally did an advertisement for MAiD. And the people that produced it, Simon's Department Store, which is a clothing retailer. I don't know why a clothing retailer is advocating for potential customers to self-inflict and kill off themselves. That just seems so crazy. I'm sure they're complicit. I'm sure they got bought off by the same lobby that's pushing this satanic proposal. But the woman that was featuring it, that was promoting the pro-euthanasia message, actually wanted to live. She didn't want to enforce MAiD. She wanted to live. She wanted to be with her friend. She wanted to get a way out of this. But they forced her. They forced her to do this. They forced her to do this commercial advocating for more Canadian citizens to self-delete themselves. Exploring assistant dying policies for mature minors. Again, there's that fancy term there. That's children. That's the legal loophole that they're allowing to expand this on, because now they could just say it's a legal minor. Well, what does that mean? Well, we believe that a child who can't vote, who can't drive, who can't drink, who can't buy a house for themselves, is able to make the conscious decision to end their life. How sickening that is. And it's a cross-jurisdiction comparison of the Netherlands, Belgium, and Canada. Huh. So not Iran, not Venezuela, not Cuba, not all these countries we're angry about, not China, not Russia. You're telling me they actually view life better than we do? But we're supposed to be freedom. We're supposed to be number one. We're great. We're supposed to Vladimir Putin's some, terrorist. What he's doing to Ukraine. Here we're killing off our own citizens. And we're not the terrorists. We're not the evildoers. We're not the satanic people that should be overthrown. Unbelievable. It is crazy. It is so crazy. And of course, it is so crazy that even Tucker Carlson mentioned about it. Tucker Carlson even mentioned about this with his recent interview with Matt Walsh. He brought attention to this. He brought attention to the Canadian government. Again, no Canadian outlets, not Global News, CTV, CBC, none of the outlets. They still want you to focus on Iran. They still want you to focus on Trump. They still want to focus on Minnesota and Minneapolis. But Tucker Carlson, of all people, got brought to attention to this, saw how sinister this is. And here's what he had to say.
Is murdering tens of thousands of its citizens every year. They're almost all white. And under the MAiD's program, they're harvesting the organs from the Canadians they kill. And no one's saying a word about it.
It's becoming one of the leading causes of death.
It is one of the leading causes of death.
Is assisted suicide. I mean, just
the government killing you, and not because you have ALS, but because you can't pay your rent, and then extending it to children, and then harvesting the organs and the blood. I mean, I feel like they're a way bigger threat to the United States than Venezuela. I would be open to an argument in favor of invading and occupying Canada on human rights grounds. I'm not joking even a tiny bit. I think it's one of the darkest countries in the world, and it's such a great country with such great people. I don't know how we can allow this to happen without at least saying something about it. I'm not actually arguing for military action, but like maybe threatening it.
Yeah, well, the MAiD program alone is one of the most evil things happening in the world, period.
Murdering your citizens and harvesting their organs on a greater scale than China does? Really? And it's right there? Government is murdering.
I mean, hard not to disagree with that. Other than the fact that I don't think America should, put boots on the ground in this country. I think that Canadians need to wake up to this, and we need to self-determine the same way you're fantasizing the Iranians of doing it. We need to do it for ourselves. That's why, again, I found it so hilarious, the irony that we're focusing all of our attention, that there's protests on the streets, that people are cheering on, locking down Toronto streets about Iran and overthrowing the Islamic regime of Iran. And yet we have this constantly going on in our backyard, in our country, affecting our people right now. Where's the protests? Where's the anger? Where's the frustration? Where are people going to wake up and realize that we need to revolt against our country? We need to revolt against people like Mark Carney. That the elbows up movement, yeah, you got duped. It was a psyop. It's a psyop for more satanic, evil crap like this. And it's only going to get worse. So I urge people, for the love of God or whoever you pray for, share that video, share this message, share this article. Let's make this go national. Let's make this go viral. Because people need to be aware of this. People need to understand how sickening, satanic, how awful this is. Now, while you're being psyoped and coerced to thinking that all the evildoers are the people that were invading or were causing a warfare with, were causing ruckus. That's why Russia stormed into Ukraine and how awful that is. This is going on from the people that are telling you, look the other way and be mad at them. Be mad at other countries. Be mad at people overseas that we have nothing to do with, to ignore the fact that we are sinister criminals. That doctor should be arrested. That doctor should be stripped of all medical licensing, not be allowed to practice in this country. And there needs to be a serious investigation into how many people were coerced into this diabolical scheme. This diabolical scheme of dying with dignity when really it is selling you, ripping you apart, killing you off, ripping you apart, and selling you, extracting organs so they can be trafficked and sold for profit. When are people going to wake up and realize how awful that is?